And then, of course, we see that there's $100 million in there as well for the Aboriginal First Nations. They're going to get an allotment of $100 million. I'm not sure. There's been no explanation on how that money is going to be spent. I'd like to see how much of that ends up on bureaucrats and not actually out there in the regions where it could actually add some use. And then the water holders are actually going to have to do up a plan to demonstrate how they've liaised with First Nation Aboriginal people as to how they use that water. So that's more regulation. I mean, they're losing their water supply, and now they're going to have all this extra regulation put over them. I mean, how are the farmers? I mean, why you would want to be a farmer anymore in this country, or any small business, is beyond me, because the amount of bureaucratic regulation, red tape, green tape, black tape, blue tape, you name it, is choking entrepreneurship in this country. It is choking innovation. And of course, the other thing that really grinds my gears when it comes to water rights in this country is the fact that our own tax office 3 years ago ruled that the sale of water rights by foreigners is not subject to capital gains. How does that work? I mean, we should actually be bringing legislation in here today that says that sale of water rights by foreigners is subject to capital gains. Actually, even better than that, we should just stop foreigners owning water rights altogether. Those water rights belong to basically the Australian people and should be used first and foremost by our farmers and our irrigators, and what's left, or we can divvy it out with the environment. But if you want to solve the Murray-Darling and have a growing population, we need to be putting water into the system, not taking it out. And another reason why we should have dams, I noticed Senator Hanson-Young said, "Oh, the river's dying. I saw dead fish." I saw some dead fish. I mean, you've got to love this stuff. The level of the lack of expertise and knowledge in how our river system works is absolutely appalling in this Senate. It is absolutely appalling, because those dead fish are a result of a black water event. Okay, these things happen all the time. We live in a country that we have droughts followed by floods followed by droughts. What happens when we have floods that follow a drought is all the debris flows down the river and chokes up the river, and that kills the fish. That's been going on for thousands of years, nothing to do with climate change or anything like that. And I'll read what the Murray-Darling Basin Authority has to say about managing blackwater events. Flooding that leads to blackwater events is a natural feature of Australian river systems, limiting the capacity to prevent and manage negative impacts. Frequency or severity of such events can be reduced by managing water systems. Oh, geez, how about we have some dams that store water in floods and let the water flow down the river in dry periods? Couldn't do that, could we? No, we couldn't do what the former Labor Prime Ministers used to do. No, because the Labor Party of today isn't the Labor Party of yesteryear, that's for sure. And we can actually ensure adequate flows to re-oxygenate the water. Wow. Wow. And listen to this. Blackwater events, downstream systems also benefit from organic inputs once the water has re-oxygenated. Okay? So there's a lesson for our senators who seem to think that a dead fish means the river's dying. No, that's a natural cycle. It's a natural part of the cycle. I mean, if you see a dead branch in the forest, it doesn't mean to say that the forest is dying. It just means to say one branch has fallen off a tree. To somehow claim that you're seeing dead fish and that's the end of it and the Murray-Darling's all over is absolutely absurd. But that's what we deal with in this chamber, with intellectual pygmies who don't have a clue about managing the water, okay, and no idea about managing water, no idea about evaporation rates. In the middle of Australia, the evaporation rate's 4 metres. Around the Menindee Lakes, it's 3 metres a year. That's half the depth of the Menindee Lakes. I mean, that's another one. When the Menindee Lakes runs dry, oh, the Menindee Lakes have run dry. They're ephemeral lakes. They run dry in droughts. That's what happens. But every time we have a drought, it's like the Menindee Lakes are drying up. The Menindee Lakes are drying up. So I say, rather than take the 450 gigalitres out away from our farmers, who feed us? Who feed us? I mean, we don't have a manufacturing industry in this country, thanks to the Hawke Keating government of the 80s that introduced the Button Plan that destroyed manufacturing, and it looks like the Albanese government's now going to destroy primary production by effectively destroying our ability to control water. That is what civilisation, that is what the foundation of civilisation was when man learnt to control water. It was by getting stable water flows, by building dams at the Tigris, the Euphrates, the Indus valleys. This is where all our ancient civilisation began. This is where the Neolithic revolution began, because they were able to store and manage water. It is by damming water, by being able to put water aside for when we have droughts in Australia, which we do, because our climate is very much like the Middle East was back at the time of the Neolithic revolution. We need to be able to do this. We are a marginal country. Once you go west of that Great Dividing Range, it is marginal country. It is marginal rainfall. And we need to increase the certainty of water supply. And the way we do that is by building dams and managing water and letting the lower lakes, and I'll call out my colleague, Senator McLaughlin. He needs a bit of an education as well. Those lower lakes' average depth, I'll repeat it again, 0.85 metres, 2 metres of evaporation a year. The best way to manage those lakes is to let the seawater back in and remove those barrages. It is completely absurd. We have all of this infrastructure in the Snowy Hydro scheme that diverts water, and then it runs all the way down to South Australia, where it sits in a great big lake and evaporates away in 6 months. That is completely absurd. That is completely absurd. We need to keep that water for our farmers. It is our farmers who feed us. Without being able to control your water, without irrigation, this country will starve, as will our primary production. And I say shame on Labor and the Greens to be wasting money on buying back water when that money should be built on actually building dams on the eastern seaboard and pushing it westwards back into the Murray-Darling, because that will put water into the system. That will add water into the system, and it can be a win-win. You can have more money for more water for environmental flows, and you can have more water for irrigation. How do you lose there? Under this scheme, we're going to cost the taxpayer hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. We're going to lose our food source, and we're going to let this water, this valuable water, run down to South Australia and sit there and evaporate in Lake Alexandria in 6 months. And I tell you what, as a Queenslander, I resent the fact that for every litres of water that crosses the border from the Murray-Condomine Basin, only 1 litre of water makes it through to South Australia, because the other 10 litres evaporates on the way down because it's so hot and dry through there. You know, it's absolute madness. So I suggest the people on the other side of the chamber actually do a geography lesson, learn a little bit about elevations, evaporation and the way our rivers flow, and actually look at building and protecting our Murray-Darling system, not destroy it.
Authorised G. Rennick, LNP Chermside.